In today's world, companies are becoming increasingly more focused on incorporating new technologies within their business. They understand that there's a need to go digital, but getting started can be a challenge, and there's no guarantee that long-term projects will provide them the value they're looking for. We often hear, "How can I see ROI sooner?" Or, "We can't wait 6 or 9 months to find out this isn't actually what our users need." The concept of quick-to-value projects is frequently brought up as a potential solution to this, and leveraging agile development methodologies is often tied into this approach. But what does this actually look like in practice, and what elements are required to achieve success? In this video, we'll give a brief overview of agile principles, provide a practical example of an agile project implementation, and review potential benefits and challenges that can be associated with this type of approach. Let's first compare some of the characteristics of waterfall and agile approaches. When getting started with any project, it's important to define a set of objectives and targets. Traditionally, this might be done through a detailed design document, where very specific features and functions are defined. Based on the requirements, the development, testing, and implementation is then performed. This works well when the desired outcome is relatively understood, and there is confidence that the final implementation likely won't deviate much, if at all, from the initial design. Another approach, which is not uncommon, is to have a more basic understanding of the desired outcome. This offers a general idea of the future objectives, but the scope is not fully laid out. The attitude may be something like, "In 3 months, we'd like to get this basic type of functionality implemented for the users, and then in 6 months, we'd like to expand this and add more features." This is often accompanied by statements like, "We're not exactly sure what we need to get there, but we think these goals could help bring value to the business." With only a base understanding of the requirements, it's still possible to start on a path to continually driving value amongst a user base. Agile approaches are more cyclical and could be considered in this type of scenario. When it comes to Agile, there are many specific terms and concepts which contribute to the overall structure of a project implementation. Some of these you'll see here. If you're unfamiliar with the various Agile methodologies, this can lead to confusion in terms of what it all means and how to get started. To clear up some of these challenges, let's examine a practical example of how Agile development principles can be used on a project. Agile development approaches are more conducive to a cyclical project structure. If we examine the typical Scrum methodology, this demonstrates a cycle that lends itself to continuous feedback and improvements, while also targeting tangible deliverables. Rather than longer-term milestones, requirements are broken down into smaller tasks that are implemented within 2 to 4 week cycles called sprints. The intention is that all the tasks planned at the beginning of the sprint will be complete by the end, meaning that there will be some sort of tangible outcome to review or demonstrate with stakeholders during a sprint review session. An emphasis on smaller tasks puts more focus on small, incremental gains in value that users should be able to see some benefit from by the end of the sprint. The list of requirements and features, referred to as the product backlog, is managed by the product owner. This is a customer resource who acts as the voice for the client, working with stakeholders to define the targets that are believed to add value, and then prioritizing the list accordingly. From here, the product owner works closely with the Scrum Master, who acts as the main point of contact between the product owner and the development team. Together, the product owner and Scrum Master review the backlog items with the development team to get clarity on the requirements before the product owner prioritizes which ones should be added to the sprint. The development team assists the product owner with estimations for each task to ensure that the right amount of work is planned for the sprint cycle. Once the sprint begins, the product owner, Scrum Master, and development team meet daily for a short 15 to 20 minute meeting called a scrum to provide updates on the work and discuss any potential blockers. This is meant to identify any issues quickly so that the Scrum Master, along with the product owner, can work to resolve the issues for the development team so that they are supported and can get back on track as soon as possible. As the sprint comes to an end, the product owner coordinates a sprint review session with the required stakeholders, ideally from varying levels of the organization. During the meeting, the development team assists with reviewing and demonstrating the features that were worked on as part of the previous sprint. This provides all the stakeholders with an opportunity to provide feedback on what they've seen, to indicate whether or not their expectations are being met. The feedback is then collected and factored into the planning for the next sprint. The process repeats itself, but not before the entire team reflects on the successes and failures of the previous sprint. This allows for a retrospective on potential improvements within the team before the subsequent development cycle begins. The cyclical nature of this approach can be used as a means to continually drive incremental value within an organization. If the goal is to see tangible results on a frequent basis, Having completed items, however small, at the conclusion of each sprint will align with this philosophy. Since the priorities are driven by the users, having many stakeholders in various roles can allow different groups to level set on critical success factors when adding items to the project backlog. It also lends itself to more stakeholder accountability and better adoption, since the features developed are directly linked to the original requests from the user base. However, working with stakeholders for feedback can present challenges as well. If the required personnel are not fully engaged, it may be difficult to get enough valuable insight into the state of the project. Differences in opinion between stakeholder groups must also be mitigated effectively, and overall expectations need to be managed appropriately by the product owner. This is especially true for complex new items, which can be susceptible to rework since the requirements are not always fully defined when requests are first put forth. So, what makes an organization a good fit for this type of approach? It would seem that there are a few key points to consider when thinking about projects that are agile in nature. Are you interested in seeing tangible results that provide value to the organization's employees on a regular basis? Are you willing to have a high level of stakeholder engagement at all levels of the organization? Are you committed to gaining insights and feedback from various user groups spread across the enterprise? Are you comfortable with a culture of continuous development and improvement rather than strictly turnkey implementations? It's important to remember that there are varying methodologies that fall under the category of Agile. Different methods are bound to work differently for different companies. In addition, Agile is not necessarily the only way to implement quick-to-value solutions. Incremental value can also be achieved using a waterfall approach, depending on the nature of the project, so it's worth remembering that the two terms are not synonymous. The approaches are simply different in their structure and implementation. One is not better or worse than the other. Ultimately, the culture of an organization can dictate whether or not a project is suited to a more agile approach. It helps to assess the culture of a business and its employees, to understand if implementations are more successful following a structured, step-by-step process, which is more waterfall-based, or if success can be more easily realized using a more iterative, cyclical method, which is more agile-based. At Brock Solutions, we have over 30 years' experience designing, implementing, and managing real-time solutions and programs. Our perspectives on project approaches are therefore rooted in real, tangible experiences, and we hope by sharing these we've answered some of the questions you may have had on the topic of Agile methodology. If you would like to learn more about our perspectives, or have any other questions on whether Agile is a fit for your digital journey, please reach out and we'd be happy to discuss. If you found this video helpful, feel free to check out our other educational videos such as How to Get Started with MES and Demystifying Manufacturing Analytics, what manufacturers need to know when looking at analytics for their enterprise.